Liz, welcome. Really excited to have you and excited to talk about being lean in building product. You've got a ton of experience. Recently, you just launched a brand new product. You rebranded in a way Chili Piper, like the tagline. So I'd love to hear the story of that. What does it take to go from kind of 0 to 1 on a new product?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here. We did just recently relaunch Chili Piper as part of the demand conversion platform. And part of doing that was the launch of one of our brand new products, Chat, which we've been working on for some time, but more seriously in the last 6 to 8 months, which is what my team has been working on. So it's really exciting, but it really was a greenfield project. This was something that, of course, exists in the market with other companies, but from our side of things, we started this completely from scratch, and it is now a fully fledged product. We have customers on it. It's been really exciting. And Chat and some other products, when you're starting them from essentially zero and they're just ideas, they can feel really massive. I think the biggest thing to answer your question, if you're going from 0 to 1, is just like scoping out the immediate and long-term vision of the product. There's so many different things that you can do and places that you can go with, let's just say chatbot specifically. Our roadmap, our backlog, it probably extends out a couple years, but we can't do everything at once. So really the most important thing for us was to scope out what's going to make the most impact immediately. Just get an MVP out ASAP, validate it, and continue to build as you go. Requirements change, of course, as you release more products, but figure out where you can cut corners, just where you should spend more time, and then just get that into customers and start talking to them.
Yeah, we're going through a similar journey for a product that we announced, interactive demos. And I'm curious, when you're building a product that it's not like the first time anyone's built chat. So how much can you rely on what's out there? And how much do you try to reinvent the wheel to be something better and more differentiated? Like, how do you think about copying, not necessarily copying, but learning from what's already working versus trying to reinvent?
Yeah, that's a great question. Chat's definitely an interesting one because the market did feel pretty saturated. A lot of our customers were using some of the other tools. The big thing for us was like, why are we building this and where can we add value based on how our users are using Chili Piper today? And when it came down to answering that question, we knew what their pain points were when they had brought up in conversation to us, hey, have you guys thought about a chat tool? Like, we're currently using another one and we are experiencing pain point A, B, and C, and trying to manage both Chili Piper's platform and this other tool. Really beneficial for us if we could consolidate our routing rules and the admin experience. So those are the core things that we were thinking about in terms of how we integrate it into our platform to keep that experience really seamless. And then we start to think about, from a product and feature perspective, how do we differentiate in terms of what's already in the market? That obviously requires tons of just assessment to understand what's out there, how are people using it, what works really well, what doesn't work really well. That's come from dozens and dozens of conversations with people who you're trying to sell to, the people who are the perfect fit for your product, and then also just kind of forward thinking and talking with the team internally, product managers, engineers, designers, and getting everyone on the same page in terms of knowledge and figuring out what's our vision for this. If there was uncapped potential in terms of what we could do, what would we think about doing? And then from there, work backwards and break down like what's realistic, what can we accomplish in the next 3 months, 6 months, and 5 years.
Yeah, I like that. Just like really blue sky thinking of what's possible and not being constrained by what's already out there. You're in a privileged position where you've got a really healthy customer base, a really great brand, access to people who have this problem. So you're validating assumptions and as you go, but how much are you building with customers? Are you showing them designs every week? Like, hey, this has changed. Or do you have a small group of people that you're going back to? Is it a Slack channel? What's the modus operandi for building with customers for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, you need to have customers that are excited about what you're building. If you don't, it is a huge red flag. Of course, customers that are excited about that product, and then also the individual features. Everything should be validated through your customers, of course, unless it's tech debt or something that is just optimization that is critical. But every time we're thinking about building something new, there needs to be at least like 2 to 5 customers who are like, yes, I want that, I need that. Otherwise, it's going to be deprioritized because build something and release it and no one's using it, then that kind of defeats the purpose. I am always temperature checking on calls. If I'm having a call about a certain thing that is coming out and the customer just wants to see how it's going to look, feel, at the same time, I'm also just throwing out ideas about another thing that we're thinking about or another feature that might be released soon, and just seeing what their reaction is if they throw out additional supplemental ideas like, oh, that's great, and or oh, I'm so excited that you're doing that, and I also wanted XYZ thing. Like, all of that is really valuable information, and we take notes on all of this and just continuously incorporate that into what we're thinking about. And we do the same thing on sales calls too. When prospects are doing demos, every question that you get is a piece of information of something that you should consider. Even if it wasn't something that is top of mind or priority, it still helps shape your product, right? That is information that's super valuable. And then the last thing I'll add is Nicholas has, our co-founder, co-CEO, he has a very interesting approach to how he started a Chili Piper, which is this idea of the bullseye strategy. He's talked about it a lot on podcasts and different videos, which is find like your ideal customer that's going to pay you the most money and go after them first. Don't waste time going on like early adopters and small companies because you think they're going to be less risk adverse. Like with Chili Piper, one of our first customers was Facebook, and we were like, that is a great first customer. They're going to challenge us. They're going to challenge our product needs and feature requirement. Let's just make it happen. And they definitely did that. And that same approach with chat. We didn't say we're newer to market and we're not at parity with some of our other competitors. We just looked at who'd be willing to work with us and use the pressure that they created for our product team to build really quickly to meet their needs.
I love that. That's one of the best things about B2B as well, is you can go after certain accounts and then they work closely with you. And I think what you said about customers or prospects asking questions, like a really good signal for fit. They ask more. Are they curious when you share about a feature or a product? So, but tactically, what does it look like? It sounds like you're doing a lot of the interviews. How many are you having in a week? Are you setting them up by yourself? Is there a single focus group that you're working with? Can you help share like tactically what it looks like to get that validation from customers as you build?
Yeah, for the chat product, before we even had a product ready, like when we were still working on Figma files, CSMs were temperature checking on calls and throwing out the word chat. If someone bit and they said, oh, I'm interested, then I would beg them to loop me in on a call with them. Same thing on the new business side. So really just getting into the weeds with the revenue teams and using them as your partners to assess interest, because they're on calls with people all day long, and out of thousands of customers, you're going to have at least a few who are going to be willing to speak with you further. And Gong is also a really great medium for doing that and just seeing what people are talking about. And then for the chat, we also had a beta group of about 5 customers, and then people would come and go based on us realizing we were a fit or maybe too early, or people coming in later on. And I worked with them really closely. So I essentially adopted the role of being like their CSM for chat, and we would try and strides and getting them onboarded. If we had a blocker, we would immediately figure out if we could build that thing, and then just go back and continue pushing until we could get to that milestone of having them live. Because if we can get our beta group live, then we know we can replicate it. And working with that group was really important, and a lot of those customers fell into that bucket of the bullseye strategy. So they were, really great influencers in helping to shape the product early on.
Amazing. That sounds like a great story coming together. And like you said, when you're building with customers, sometimes you don't know what you need to build. They have a requirement that you had planned, and then you want to try and ship that really quickly. How do you balance like having a roadmap or like, hey, this is stuff that we want to build and it's 6 months out or a year out, versus listening to what they're saying and building that immediately? How do you find the balance of the reactive and maybe the proactive pieces?
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge, because there's going to be accessory requests that don't really fit the persona that you're generally trying to build for while you establish product market fit of that thing early on. So we had to get really clear on who we were building it for. With chat, there's so many use cases. There's customer success support, sales and marketing. We were really focused on sales and marketing. So from an early stage, we knew that the features that we were going to incorporate were going to serve those use cases really well. anything that fell outside of that bucket, we would kick the can down the road, so to speak, because we knew it was going to deter us from being able to serve that B2B sales and marketing use case really well, which is also our bread and butter persona. So that was like the first tier of hierarchy and prioritization. And then alternatively, we have a really awesome internal team of like hackers when it comes to figuring out workflows, alternatives, workarounds. There's a lot you can do in Salesforce as well. We generally consider, is there another way to accomplish what you're asking? Can we do it with Salesforce flows? I know it's not optimal, but if we can set it up once and get it to work, is this something that we can maybe reconsider later on to make more native? And usually that also was something that was feasible in most cases when that did happen.
Yeah, that sounds great to work around, and so you need to build it. And this is maybe controversial, but was there anything that you did that was like a waste of time in hindsight? Do you feel like now that you took a product from 0 to 1 in the market now, what would you not do again, or what would you not repeat, or would you feel like that maybe wasn't the best use of time?
Yeah, for sure. I would love to talk to someone who's had a pretty linearly perfect product launch, both in like kind of the build and launch experience itself. But I think there's always a sense of like prematurely optimizing things, like especially when you're building and launching a new product. So many things are MVPs, like you're releasing MVP versions of essentially everything because you're trying to build quickly and validate quickly. And it's not a waste of time to prematurely optimize, but it's probably not the best use of time in that stage. And I think this is where the balance of being like a product manager and a perfectionist can kind of conflict. So that is definitely something that we've reflected on. But the way that we think about things and the framework that we use to approach of should we optimize now or later is thinking about a feature in terms of both function and UX, and then to go a little deeper than function, what is the frequency of usage? So does this thing work, and is it easy to use? And if something works and it's not easy to use, how often is the user going to be using it? If it's every single day, then we should probably prioritize making it easier to use. But if it's something they use once during onboarding, maybe then we can figure that out later. So just thinking about those two elements and if it really makes sense to spend that time now or later.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, I feel like we could talk a lot more about this, but let's move on to a couple of quick fire questions. So number one, what are your go-to resources for learning new stuff, just as a PM? Where do you go to learn new stuff?
Lenny's newsletter, podcast, Department of Product Growth on Substack, just proactively notifications popping up on my phone, a lot of really interesting reads on there.
Lots to read and listen to. Okay, great. And what product that you use regularly and you love?
Notion. I keep it simple. It's adaptable. It's flexible. I don't like to have too many tools, and Notion meets every single day.
Do you use the calendar?
I don't use the calendar. I still use Google Calendar, but I've heard things about it. I did used to use Chrome, which they acquired. Yeah, perhaps I'll reconsider.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Pulkit.
Okay.